Good morning, Rajiv sir. Good morning. Good evening, Jaspreet ma'am.
Good morning. Namaste, ma'am.
Good evening, ma'am. Good evening.
Oh, yes.
Ma'am, you can now unmute yourself and also switch on your camera also, ma'am. You are the co-host also now.
Okay. Yeah. Give me 1 minute, ma'am. Am I audible?
Yes, ma'am, you're audible.
Yes, ma'am.
Give me 1 minute.
Ma'am, our apologies that the session got delayed a bit, like due to some technical issue. We'll start immediately. Ma'am, please check your sharing and everything, and then we can start.
Okay, good evening, everyone. Ma'am, can I start the session?
Yes, ma'am. Ma'am, you want to test, try to check the sharing, your PPT, ma'am? Or can we start?
I'll do that. I'll switch on my camera only for a minute. Good evening, everyone. I'm having a little bit of a spondylitis problem.
Not an issue,
So-
ma'am. Not an issue.
Good evening, everyone. And I'll now switch off the camera if possible. Okay.
It's okay,
So-
ma'am. It's okay.
Yeah. Good evening, everyone, and welcome to the SLR and meta-analysis session. And now what I'll do, ma'am, I'll just give me 1 minute. Let me share I'll share the screen only because I'll be switching with too many windows while taking up the
Rajiv, sir,
session.
can we start with the introduction part while ma'am is trying?
Okay, yeah, please.
Rajiv, sir.
Ji, ma'am.
Sir, can we start with the introduction, sir? Over to you. Sir, we have with us Dr. Rajiv Nayan, sir, from Ramanujan College. Throughout the session, sir will be there with you for the purpose of coordinating and making sure that the entire session of yours goes on smoothly, ma'am.
Sure, ma'am. Sure. Thank you so much. Thank you, Doctor.
Rajiv, sir,
Thank you.
over to you.
Yeah. Yes, ma'am. Thank you, ma'am. The committee give me the opportunity today introduced esteemed guest today, Dr. Jaspreet Kaur, Associate Professor Marketing. She is basically the specialized in consumer behavior and marketing research. Ma'am have a long experience of marketing and the business administration. Ma'am, at present in Business School Pearl Academy, this is global system she is handling. Ma'am has published so many articles in the national and international reputed journal. Ma'am is basically the master of marketing and the marketing research. Today with us, she will basically enlighten today, day 7th session, which is introduction, system, literature review, and various framework. Over to you, ma'am.
Thank you so much, Dr. Rajiv, sir. Thank you so much, Dr. Anjali, ma'am. It's always an honor to come to Delhi University. I'm still a learner, but I think I'm blessed because of which Delhi University, an institution where I did my graduation, calls me as a resource. So I'm really blessed. I'll start with, I'm just sharing with you this. I'll start with an SLR, systematic literature review. I have just spoken to Dr. Anjali and understood that systematic literature review is something which is new to you. As yet, it's not been covered, so I'm going to start from there. Slowly and gradually, I'll go to meta-analysis, probably in the second session, because that is more of the statistical part of SLR, systematic literature review. So now, let me start this, and what I'll do is, in the SLR, when I'm narrating to you, and even in meta-analysis, when I'm narrating to you in the second session, I will explain to you how I did my paper. So I have a paper which is in minor revision in a B category journal by the name of Journal of Islamic Marketing. Okay, and I'll tell you the topic also. I'll show you the Excel sheets also. I'll try to do something that is not there on YouTube or the Borenstein book of meta-analysis. That is what I'll try to do. You can later on go and study the book of Borenstein and probably see the YouTube videos. You'll get an idea of what is that you'll get. But here what I'm going to do is narrate about how a research paper is written in this domain, because I understand that your aim of all of you who have come here, your aim is to publish. Okay, either publish a research paper or publish your dissertation. The aim is publication. Okay. Now, systematic review and meta-analysis. I had heard about review of literature very often. I am one of those, when I do a research paper, I'm the one who does chapter number 1, introduction, chapter number 2, review of literature, and chapter number, last one, 5th one, which is implication. So basic review of literature, I knew. I started quantitative analysis in 2018, and slowly and gradually I came across these SLR and meta-analysis papers. Now, this is when I suddenly, in my domain, consumer behavior, I work on consumer behavior, and that too in sustainable consumption. So all of a sudden I saw that, there was an upsurge of systematic literature review papers, an upsurge of meta-analysis papers. And this is when I started studying the topic in 2020. I found out that there are so many journals which are bringing up special issues in systematic literature review. That further, in a way, forced me to learn this topic. But what is SLR? So, a systematic literature review is a collection of all possible studies. When I say studies, these are secondary data studies. In an SLR and meta-analysis, we never collect primary data. So, and systematic review is a collection of all possible studies related to a given topic, and we review and analyze their results. So, in a simple language, I will be collecting the results of, say, some 100 studies from the past 20 years, and I will be consolidating their results and saying that, okay, this is the final result of this study. Okay, that is what is systematic literature review. During the systematic literature review process, the quality of studies are evaluated. Even the quantitative literature review could also be done in systematic literature review, something which very few people know. Okay, so people feel that when we are doing a review paper, it can only and only be done qualitatively. That is incorrect. A quantitative review of the past secondary data is also now possible. But after all said and done, this is a technique which is only and only possible through collection of secondary data. It cannot be done through primary data. So forget collecting questionnaires, interviews, etc. It cannot be done. It can only and only be done by collecting the secondary data. Okay, so this is an introduction of systematic review for you. I hope all of you can see my screen. What I'll do is I'll just share it again. Yeah, I want to share screen. And what I want to do is I want to take you to Google and actually show you the special editions. So if I write special issue, I hope all of you can now see my Google screen. Okay, if I type this, look at the number of special issues which journals have come up with. Now, this is actually a journal by Wiley Publishers by Justin Balser. Special issue on systematic literature review by MDPI, by Springer. Okay, so call for papers in European Management Journal. This is an A category journal of Elsevier. Systematic literature review. So there are so many special issues called for in SLR. This is the essence of this one topic. But what is most important is that, many a times people confuse it with normal review. Okay, they should not be confused with normal review. And how SLR is different from a normal review, I generally explain to my students with this example. So suppose tomorrow I turn rich overnight. Okay, so I turn rich overnight and I feel that, okay, now I should be, opening up a polo team and I should be getting into the game of polo. Okay. If I do decide likewise, I will have to buy some horses for my game and to win it. When I go and buy horses, I get two types of vendors. One is a vendor who's on the left side. Okay, he's a normal narrative review vendor. And one is a vendor on the right side. This guy is a systematic review vendor. Look at the difference between these two. The narrative review vendor, when he speaks to me, he brings me one horse and he says that, ma'am, this is a brown color horse. It is the finest breed in UK. It has won over 500 races. It has a rocket boat speed. Then he brings a second horse. Again, he repeats the same thing. Brings a third one. Again, he repeats the same thing. So I'm confused as to which horse to pick up and which horse to leave. Vis-a-vis that, I have another vendor who's on the right side. And this vendor shows me all 40 horses together and says, ma'am, the effect of this horse, or should I say the power of this horse, horse number 1 is 0.3, horse number 2 is 0.5, horse number 6 is 0.9. Now it is easier for me to select the horses and make a polo team because I'm not confused in narration. I'm very, very clear because a power of these horses is being told to me individually. I will collect some 11, 12 horses. I will make a team. I will consolidate the overall effect size of all 12 horses taken together. And I'll say, okay, this is the power of my team vis-a-vis my opponent. This technique, which this vendor has shown you, is actually called a systematic literature review. These 40 horses that you see are not 40 horses, but 40 papers. They are 40 secondary data research papers that you have collected. In the statistical technique called meta-analysis, I'm going to calculate the effect size or power of each of these horses or research papers. And I am going to collate that for 40 horses or 40 papers and report a consolidated effect or consolidated power of all these 40 papers as an aggregate set of secondary data. That is what is systematic literature review. Vis-a-vis that, if you see a narrative review, or how is a narrative review different from an SLR, if I have to work on this, I know that a narrative review is something like this. All of us have done this. We must have done this either in a PhD, or maybe we did it somewhere, maybe during our PhDs, or during writing a paper, or sometimes in MBA dissertation also, maybe we have done it. Now here, when you see this literature review, what do you see? You see that it's a typical narrative review, no powers, no effect size given to any of the papers. Here are very high. Somebody is not on mute. Shalini ma'am, you're not on mute. Shalini ma'am, please mute yourself. Okay. So out of this literature review that you see, you can see that ideally only 4 or 5 authors have been cited here. And this is exactly what we also do. So McCarthy, Cabelan, Junko, Kirchner, these are the major authors who have been cited here. Number one, the number of authors which have been cited in secondary data narrative review are barely 5 to 6. But when I do my systematic review, I'm going to cite some 100 authors. So it is more exhaustive than a narrative review, number one. Number two, a narrative review is highly biased. Why I say it's highly biased is because a narrative review, nobody asks you why you took these 5 authors. Nobody is going to ask you why you took a Kabilan, why you took a McCarthy. In fact, your PhD scholar or whoever's your guide generally tells you, take the latest past 5 years authors. That's what everybody tells you. They say that just take the last 5 years authors. That is all that they guide you with. But when we take an SLR, what happens is, in an SLR, we are told to take all authors in your area from the past 20 years. Can you imagine how exhaustive a study an SLR is vis-a-vis a narrative review, where you're barely taking 4-5 authors, and those authors also are primarily taken from the past 5 years, because you're told to do that. You're told to take authors only from the past 5 years. Number one. Number two, the study, which is narrative review, is also biased because these authors, by default, as far as I can see, are the most famous in the domain. See, when you're studying a UTAUT model, for all of you who are in IT, you cannot do without writing Venkatesh sir's paper. Okay. When you are talking about sustainability or green marketing, you cannot write without Belk and Whittle Scott's paper. So when we do a narrative review, the review is highly biased because we are only collecting past 5 years papers, and we are only collecting the famous people's papers. That is not the case in an SLR. In SLR, I am going to collect each and every author's paper from my particular domain. It could be 20-year-old study, it could be 25-year-old study. So an SLR is not easy. There's an SLR paper I'm doing on neuromarketing, and I have got barely 35 papers. And now my team is struggling. My team is struggling to get more papers because there's a specific domain we have taken. I'll come to that. I'll come to ROs. And in that particular domain, from the past 20 years of study, because neuromarketing is a new topic, it's a fairly new topic. Ideally, sometimes I feel I shouldn't have done an SLR on it. But now that I've started with a team of 7 people, I see that I've barely found 35 papers from that domain, and I need data. If I was to do a literature of only, say, 10 to 12 authors, I could have done a narrative review. Why will I do an SLR? So SLR is much, much more rigorous, much, much more exhaustive. So the major differences between a normal literature review and an SLR is that in a systematic review, the objectives are defined clearly, much clearly than a narrative review. We have a specific question here. The objectives are clear and a priori. Okay. A systematic review has a protocol. I'll come to what is a protocol. Whereas a narrative review has no protocol of selection of authors. You can put anybody's name and nobody questions you. Okay. A quantitative analysis can be done in an SLR. A quantitative analysis cannot be done in a narrative review. So now, if you've understood the difference between these two, let's straight away start the process of writing a paper through SLR. And from here on, I'm going to introduce my paper, which is right now in a minor revision. And I'm going to explain to you the journey. I'll explain to you the journey of, I've written 3 papers ever since, I think, 2021. I've submitted 3 papers. One luckily got through a B category journal, but there are another 2 which are, there's one which is getting into A category review thrice and has been rejected. I don't know what's wrong. B category also, and I'll tell you exactly why it's getting rejected. so that at least you don't do the mistake of choosing a wrong topic like I did in few of my papers in the year 2021. Okay, so step number 1, determine the research question. And this is not the normal research question that you thought it was. So right in the beginning of this session, I think when you were told about a rationale, when you were told about listing a research problem in the beginning, you must have been told about an RO. Okay. And the best person to explain what's an RO in a normal paper, normal as in non-SLR paper, the best to do that is Dr. Neeraj Kaushik. And I suppose he is giving you a session. So nobody explains better than him how an RO is constructed. But the game plan in an SLR is a little different. In an SLR, I have to define the RO into population, intervention, comparison, and outcome. So now let me introduce you to my paper. My paper has been written on a topic named Impact of Religiosity on Purchase Intention. So as I said, I'm a marketer, okay? I study consumer behavior. I study the impact of consumer behavior variables on purchase intention, okay? And one of the very, very critical cultural factor in consumer behavior is the religion of the consumer. I'm not saying it. Hundreds of researchers have said it. It's not that I'm being judgmental. Thousands of papers have been written on it. So I said, when thousands of papers have been written on it, why not summarize all the papers which have been written on the topic of religiosity and purchase intention? So this is the topic that I picked up and I started writing the paper. I got somewhere around, initially, I got some 23 papers from which I extracted data. When I sent it to the reviewer, he said 23 is a very less number for SLR. Expand your research. So we expanded it and resubmitted it in 2021, December, where now there were somewhere around 58 papers on this topic. All papers were on the topic of religiosity and purchase intention. But they were all based on a particular research question in the form of a PICO. What is my population? My population, which is my 58 secondary data paper, has two types of population. Majority of papers out of 58, probably 40, are papers where Muslims have been studied. Halal products have been studied. And the impact of Muslim religion on their purchase has been studied. There are another 18 papers where Christians have been studied or other religions have been studied. So my population now has a mix of, I wouldn't say all religions. I would say that majorly my data set, my secondary data set for SLR has a population of Muslims followed by Christians. Intervention. Although my objective is impact of religiosity on purchase intention, is there any one factor which is varying in all these 58 papers? I repeat, although my RO is the impact of religion on purchase intention, is there any one factor which is varying in all these papers? There were n number of factors. Okay, one factor which was varying in all these papers was location. When I say varying, I don't mean that 58 papers should have 58 different locations. That's not what I mean. Maybe 4 to 5 papers are from the same location. That is not a problem. The problem is that it should be varying, it should be an intervention, it should be a moderator. So in my paper, location of the study became a moderator. So among these studies, majorly which were done in Muslim countries, it varied from Malaysia to Indonesia to Arab countries to India to Pakistan. It varied, Ukraine. So there were so many, countries. There are so many countries in the world who have a Muslim population. So my intervention over here became the country. Location of the study in all those papers became my intervention. Now, point number 3, comparison. What comparisons can you make from these 58 studies? One comparison that I made was based on my population. So I have compared the 40 papers where Muslims and their religion is impacting intention, and the other 18 papers where the non-Muslim, be it a Christian or a Buddhist or whatever they have been worked on, his religion is impacting purchase intention. So these are the 2 comparisons I'm going to do on the basis of past literature. Outcome. What is the outcome of this? The outcome of this will be, I will be suggesting, I come from the management field. Of course, I understand that here people can come from different fields, but I primarily come from the management field. So for me, out of this research, my outcome is that, Kajal ma'am, you're not on mute. Kajal ma'am, please mute yourself. My outcome from this research is to go to the marketers and tell them, listen, from a research of the past 20 years of some 58 papers which have worked on religiosity and purchase intention, I have found out that religiosity majorly impacts purchase intention. I'll give a value also. So when you are positioning a product, when you are advertising a product, make sure that religion is a part of that psychographic variable during positioning your customer. This is an outcome that I'm going to give. When I say outcome, in my case, it's managerial outcome. In students who are doing a scientific research, it becomes a scientific outcome. For engineers, it becomes a engineering outcome. So outcome is related to our industries where we are working, domains of study where we are working, we give an outcome. Now, let me show you a sample paper where PICO has been done. So as and when I do a step, I'll show you a paper. I cannot show you my paper right now because it's in minor revision. It's not yet published. Once it is, then I'll be able to show you that paper. So this is a paper in front of you. This is a published paper of SLR. And if you really want to read, give me 1 minute. Yeah. So here you go. This one paragraph you can read. This is how we define the research objective in an SLR paper. It's not that normal defining to study the impact of, to assess the impact of. That's not how we do it in an SLR paper. You can read, you can take a minute and read this paragraph. So we write a whole paragraph on the objectives. This is one step complete. Okay. Let me go to the second step, assemble a research team. The reason of assembling a research team, ideally, is that, guys, I request all faculties and research scholars to please mute yourself. Please mute yourself, and I'll come to questions somewhere around 6:10. Okay, so we'll also go for a break somewhere around 6:30. I'll come for questions at 6:10 and I'll allow you to ask questions, right? I'll give you 20 minutes for question answers. Let me finish the process. Please keep on mute. Okay, please keep on mute, everyone. Now, assemble a research team. Why assemble a research team? Because not everybody has an access to Scopus. Not everybody has an access to ProQuest. Not everybody has an access to Web of Science. But when I am collecting papers, I need access to all these databases to collect papers. And thus a research team is very, very effective. More so, I have to see the papers from past 20 years. Thus, a research team is always welcome. Okay. Point number 3, determine if there is any published systematic review on your topic. And this is where I'll share a bitter experience with you people, but through Google. So this is, I hope all of you can now see my Google screen. This one paper I had written, the unfortunate paper that I call, I mean, it's not even getting through a B category. Generally, B category, ABDCB, I mean, is not that difficult a category for me, but it's just not getting through, even in an ABDCB category. In the year 2020, I started this paper, and the paper was a meta-analysis on customer engagement. But what happened is, by the time I completed it in 2021, I saw that 2 competitor papers had already been published. So this is my first competitor, Santini et al. 2020. Probably they got their paper published in end of December. We had started doing a meta-analysis paper somewhere around August 2020. At that point, I had checked that there's no meta-analysis paper on this topic. That's why I started. But while in the process of making the paper, 2 papers came up. One was Santini et al. And one was Barari et al. Okay. So 2 papers came up, and both of them, unfortunate for me, are A category journals. And now, when I send my SLR paper to the reviewer says, if 2 people have already reviewed it, if 2 people have already reviewed the past 20 years of study, what new are you doing? They have just reviewed it in year 2020 and 2021. What are you doing? Okay. So now, getting a paper published in SLR in customer engagement has become a horrendous job, and I really do not know what will happen of that paper. But let me talk of my second paper. So if I say religiosity and purchase intention, suppose I put this topic, the paper which has got through very easily. Okay, I'm talking about this paper. And we say meta-analysis. Suppose SLR could be of many types. It could be a simple systematic literature review, which is narrative review. It could be a statistical review like a meta-analysis. It could be a review of citations and authors, which is bibliometry. Okay, I generally work on meta-analysis, so I have checked out. Till date, there is no paper. Okay, and because till date there is no paper, which encourages me to take the same paper into an A category also, because right now, and again, this paper I've been making again since year 2020 only. But here I've been a little lucky, because despite the fact that I got it published in 2021, I send it for review. There still isn't a meta-analysis or a systematic literature review on this topic.
Excuse me, ma'am.
Yes, yes.
Ma'am, I just request, can you make me and Dr. Rajiv the co-host, so that if there is some problem on your end, we are there.
How do I do that, ma'am?
Ma'am, you click on my name, Dr. Anjali Gupta. And
okay, give me 1 minute. So I go to participants. Okay, more, Anjali Gupta, more, make host or co-host. Should I make you the host?
Ma'am, no, make me the co-host.
Okay,
so that
I'll make you the co-host. And
ma'am, please do this for Dr. Rajiv also.
Dr. Rajiv Nayan?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay.
Yes, ma'am. Yes, ma'am.
Yes, I have made you co-host, both of you.
Okay.
Please share.
Thanks a lot.
Okay.
Right. So here I was lucky enough, but in the customer engagement paper, I was not lucky enough. Okay. I'll talk about one more paper. I wanted to do someone, someone suggested a SLR on impulsive buying. Okay. Checked. Vidhi ma'am, you're not on mute. Vidhi ma'am, please mute yourself. So somebody told me there was a ma'am who contacted me. She said, ma'am, I want to do something on impulsive buying. She worked very hard. She had her data collected. But when we checked out on meta-analytical papers, we found that in 2021, there's already a paper on meta-analysis of impulsive buying. So we said that we cannot get into this domain. There's another paper on 2014 also. So we said, no, somebody has, again, there's another paper by Santini. Santini sir seems to be writing only on topics on which I write. Huh? Again, there's a paper by Santini on impulsive buying. Okay, so coincidentally, both the papers, Santini sir has become my competitor. Now, because there are papers of impulsive buying and meta-analytical papers on impulsive buying, I did not want to venture into this. So you know what I did? There was another related variable, which is urge to buy. Okay, I picked up this variable. I did a meta-analysis on urge to buy, and this is one paper, of course, with Dr. Justin Paul, which has got through review process in 3A category journals, but got rejected. So there is definitely something wrong I'm doing with the paper. I'm still in a learning process, but 3 journals we have submitted it since last year, 2021, all A category journals, and it has got through in review. That's a very big thing. It's not being desk rejected. Your SLR paper will be desk rejected only if the editor sees that this topic has already been studied by someone else in the domain of SLR and meta-analysis. If the editor sees that there is no similar research, which is happening to me in the case of urge to buy, which is happening to me in the case of religiosity paper, my papers are getting through review because there is no sorry, there is no pre-published SLR on these topics. So through this example, I am trying to tell you this third step, which is see if there's a published systematic review on your topic, and only if it is not there, venture into a topic. That is when it makes a niche. Okay. Step number 4, develop and register a protocol for the study. So you have to go by protocols in systematic review, because systematic review comes from the medical sciences domain. So unlike social sciences where we choose any 5 authors and say ho gaya literature review, we can't do that with an SLR. We have a very strict protocol, and let me show you what that protocol looks like. And what is a protocol, first of all? A protocol is a predefined series of steps to define well-stated limit. It's a series of steps that I take the reviewer through, where I say, this is my limit. See, despite the fact that I do say that I am a very dedicated researcher, I am, getting the world of studies on religiosity. I'm not leaving any study which is not there on religiosity. Despite the fact I say this, I know as a human, it is not possible to get all the studies. So write it down to the author and say, write it down to the reviewer and say, these are my limitations. This is where I'm limited. Okay. This is what you call a protocol. The protocol tells The inclusion and exclusion criteria. Have you ever done it in review of literature? Have you ever gone to your guide and explained, ma'am, I'm taking these authors and not taking these authors? It is understood. Past 5 years, most famous authors just write in your review of literature. The work is done. But here we have to explain why. So if my paper had 58 secondary data papers, I had to explain why I did that. Okay, so these are inclusion and exclusion principles. So in systematic review and meta-analysis, these protocols are known as Prisma, or this full process is known as Prisma. It is called preferred reporting items for systematic review and meta-analysis. And let me show this to you. The Prisma looks something like this. This is actually a tabular form that you'll have to show in your paper as well as write about it. So it's just not that, you give a diagrammatic form and then say, okay, please read through it. No, you'll have to explain this further. And I'll take you through my paper of how I have explained the inclusion and exclusion principles. Okay. So the writing part, I'll show you, but please understand the concept first. So Prisma, we start by saying that we research 3 databases. Yes, I'm telling the reviewer that I'm restricted to 3 databases. So nobody is expecting you to find some 50 databases. Okay, so I'm not saying that 50 databases can be studied. I'm going to take any 3. The most famous 3, of course, to say that I have taken authentic reports, say Scopus, Web of Science, ProQuest, etc. And after finding these 3 databases, I say I found somewhere around 6,638 papers. The first thing that I do is, nobody's expecting you to read the full text of these papers. The first thing that I have to do is I have to remove the papers on the basis of title. And I remember one gentleman almost had a fight with me in one of the workshops. He said, ma'am, how can you reject a paper on the basis of title? Maybe the paper is important. Agreed. But when you have such a huge data from the past 20 years, you cannot expect a team to be writing a research paper of 8,000 words within 3 to 4 months and reading each of those 6,638 papers. It's not logical. I'll never be able to finish my paper. Number one. So 6,000 papers I screen on the basis of title. I'm left with 1,395 articles, out of which I remove the duplicates. So we can all go to Mendeley and remove the duplicates. So 198 duplicates I have removed. I'm left with 1197 papers. 1197 papers. Now I come to reading the abstract. So I had my first level of screening or rejection is title. My second level of screening is abstract. So I screen the abstracts and I exclude 821 papers. I'm now left with 450 papers, and these I read full text. So if suppose there are 3 authors, somewhere around 150, 120 papers can be given to each of the authors, and they can finish this off. Okay. After doing the full screening, again, I'll find that some say 319 papers should not be included. See, I am going to tell in my writing exactly why they were not, why these rejections are being made. I'll show you in my paper. So just hold on. After this chart, I'm actually going to tell you that how I came from this 415 to 319. What was the criteria of excluding? I'll show you that. So I did a full screening of 415 papers. I came down to 319 papers. Now I excluded 319 on the basis of full screening, and I came up to 100 papers. These 100 papers, I critically analyze and write a SLR paper, a systematic literature review paper. But if I want to get into meta-analysis. Meta-analysis is the statistical tool of SLR. If I want to get into meta-analysis, I can take only and only quantitative data. I repeat, when I want to get into meta-analysis, SLR is a broader term. Meta-analysis is a specific and narrower term. So if I want to get into meta-analysis, I will have to take from among these 100 only the quantitative papers. So if I'm doing a normal SLR, I can stop here with 100 papers where there's a mix of qualitative and quantitative. I summarize all the theories, give a critical review, give some findings out of these 100, say where are the gaps in past literature from these 100. But in case I want to go for a specific technique like meta-analysis, I will further reduce the papers on the basis of quantitative research, remove the qualitative papers, and reduce these papers to somewhere around 41 papers. Even in these 41 quantitative papers, which I'm going to use for meta-analysis, it might be possible that that one value I need between religiosity and purchase intention, which in this case in social science is the correlation value, it is possible that 10 papers are not even reporting it. So because 10 papers are not reporting it, I write to the authors that please give me correlational values. I'm doing a research paper on meta-analysis. If they are kind enough to answer, well and good, or else I have to remove these 10 papers. And now I'm left with 31 papers for which I'll do a statistical analysis or meta-analysis for an SLR. Okay, now this is what is called a Prisma. You define your limits. But now let me tell you the next step rather. So, after you do the Prisma, so develop and register a protocol for study, develop the inclusion and exclusion criteria. So right now we have just shown you a protocol. What was the inclusion criteria? What was the exclusion criteria? And step number 6 is also related to it. Select studies on the basis of those 2 criteria. So here, give me 1 minute. I would like to take you to my paper where you can read. Actually, you can read this inclusion and exclusion criteria. Okay, so just give me 1 minute. And this paper that you see comes after 2 revisions. Okay, so this is not something I got right in the beginning. There were quite a few revisions done on this. Okay, so give me 1 minute. Review, delete all comments in that documents. Okay. Okay, and give me 1 minute here. Show commands. Okay, accept all changes. Yeah, so this should do it. Yeah, now I think it's okay. So this is the last proofread version that we have sent, and all that you see in yellow color, I hope you can see it, the highlighted text, these are all revisions. So this is what we added to the paper after revisions. So I'm just taking you to straight away to the part where inclusion and exclusion, this is all review of literature. Yeah, so in research methods, we write the inclusion and exclusion principles. So this is actually the process of Prisma that has been explained. And then, yeah, so this is where I start explaining that these were the databases that I started collecting papers from. Not only this, I'm going to highlight this for you so that it's easier for you to read these parts. I hope you can read these. Okay, I'll make it a little larger. Yeah, maybe now it's a little better for you to read. Okay, not only do we specify the databases from which we are taking the papers, we also write the keywords that we used to find out those papers. Inclusion principle. It is only papers which consisted of these keywords that we included, period. Okay. Further, we say that we were not restricted only to published papers. So we did include papers which were from conferences, thesis, dissertation, journal articles. So we were not restricted to only published papers or A category journal papers. We did the inclusion on the basis of all types of articles. So my inclusion includes papers, thesis, conferences, everything. Further, we say, can let me remove this highlight because then it causes confusion for me. This is an actual script we have, which probably will come out with a minor revision. We also said that after using these keywords, we came to somewhere around 435 studies, of which 104 were identified to be relevant. So we read 435 studies. We actually did the full article, reading for these 435 studies. Now, at every point when you include an inclusion principle, it becomes a point for the reviewer. So there was this one reviewer, I don't think if it was for this journal or not, but there was one reviewer who raised a question on this. So, they actually said that why did you use predictors of religiosity and purchase intention? Not in this journal, some other journal that I had submitted it. So there was this one reviewer who said that why didn't you use the word factors affecting religion and purchase intention? So these types you will get, okay? But you have to be specific and say that these are the words I used. Further, these are the inclusion principles. The paper written in English is the paper that I've included. Now, you might be finding it very funny. I mean, why do we have to tell the reviewers that we took English papers? Isn't it understood? No. In an SLR, you're supposed to be taking the world's paper. It is not understood that why you as a researcher neglected the paper which was written in Italian language. It is research. It was research about religiosity and intention. Why did you neglect the paper? Simply because it's written in another language. You're not supposed to be doing that, at least in an SLR. You can do it in normal review chapters. A normal review, which is barely 2,000 words in a research paper, you can do it over there. But in an SLR paper, we are not expected to even neglect the research which is done in an Arabic language, an Italian, a French, Indonesian. You cannot neglect those papers. But at the same time, the reviewer doesn't expect you to be multilingual to that extent that you know all the languages of the world. The reviewer is also not expecting that you get those papers translated into English and include them. No. The reviewer is expecting you to set a protocol. What is a protocol? State limits. State, I have taken only English papers. State, I have not taken any papers which are non-English. Further, the papers reviewed in a peer-reviewed conference, working paper, dissertation have been included. Okay. Any paper which was not in an electronic form has not been included. There are so many predatory journals, okay, where, they give you a hard copy. You pay 1,500 rupees, they get your papers published. It's a hard copy. Any type of, with all due respect, literally, I shouldn't be saying that, but very, very substandard research gets published in these journals. And people, for the heck of generating publications, do gifts in such journals also. These journals never have a paper in the electronic format. That is because these journals for sure don't even check the plagiarism. I'm dead sure. They just chapify the paper like that because they're getting a 1,500 or 2,000, whatever payment the researchers are giving. I don't trust such research. I have not included it in my paper. So any paper, hard copy, journals, even journals of universities, where there is no electronic form of that journal, I have excluded. Okay. Papers related to religiosity or directly or indirectly. So when I say directly or indirectly, I've explained this. Papers where religiosity, religion, religious belief, religious values, these words are there. I have included those papers. So this is just a gist of, I'm just trying to explain to you. There's a lot more. I can go on reading and reading. This is like at least a 5-page that we give about inclusion and exclusion. But I'm just explaining to you step number 5 and 6, where we say this is inclusion, that is exclusion. On the basis of that, we select our studies which are to be included and which are to be excluded. The next step is, once we have selected, so on the basis of these exclusion and inclusion that you have just seen, and I've made you read, I selected some 58 studies. Step number 7, extract data. So how does the Excel sheet look like when you extract data? Let me show you the exact Excel sheet where I've extracted data. I'll have to go back to my religiosity folder. There are too many windows open. So that's a typical desktop of a researcher who has too many things to do and doesn't have any time to organize. Due apologies for this, but yeah. So this is my folder of religiosity. I want to show you the Excel sheet where I've extracted data from. Yeah, this should be it, of all my 58 papers. So this is my Excel sheet. These are the columns that we make, of course, on our assessment. These columns might vary, but depending on what sort of an analysis you want to do for the 58 papers, these are the columns you make. So there's a serial number, there's a title of the page, an author, year of publication. Sometimes, in an SLR, we might want to analyze that how the papers have grown over the years. Okay, so to show that, I should know the year of publication. Okay, so that is there, the independent, variable, dependent. This I'll read out when I do meta-analysis. I'm not showing you this right now. This is technical stuff. Sample size, location. I told you my intervention was the location. My intervention in this research was location of the study. I had to take location. The sample size, the product category. I told you that 40 papers were from Muslims made on halal category. So I did segment them into halal and non-halal papers, that category. So these are the major. We could make another column like the journal name also, because in some SLR papers, they give you bar charts of, the number of journals who have published on this particular issue, religiosity and intention. So this is how you extract data from all the 58 papers. Okay. And once you extract data, after that, you do the interpretation and synthesis of that paper. So although my paper was a meta-analytical paper, I would like to show you here a paper which is truly SLR. Even if you do not know too much technical about meta-analysis, still all of you have the capability of writing an SLR paper. And this is an A category SLR paper where this person was working on green marketing. He has also shown his inclusion, exclusion, English papers he has taken, EBSCO Scopus, Web of Science he took. Then he's also written the keywords which he selected. He's made a Prisma like they make for those. And look at his analysis part. So I am on step number, just give me 1 minute. Yeah. So I'm on step number 8. Extraction of data I've shown you in Excel sheet, step number 7. I'm on step number 8, where we synthesize or interpret results. How do we interpret through this Excel sheet? We interpret in this form. So look, if I could have made a column of journal names, this is the, this is the journal name table. This is what we call as interpretation. This is what we call analysis in SLR. If you remember, I had an year of publication. So I've made a graph of the year of publication. This is how you interpret or analyze year of publication. I also had a column, if you remember, of products or topics of the paper. This is how you make a simple bar chart and show that over the years, these are the topics which have been majorly studied, or these are the topics which have been minorly studied, based on that column that I showed you for product category, or I showed you for industry or theory or whatever you want to pick up. Okay, so this is analysis, and the final step would be to update review, which means once your paper gets published, then the data gets updated. So because in case of customer engagement, somebody has already updated the review, that is the reason my paper is not getting published, right? But in religiosity, I think I'll be the first one, hopefully with God's grace, to update the review. And then once I do this, suppose in 2022 that paper gets published, and I've updated the review on religiosity and PI, none of you, unfortunately, will be able to work on this topic now for another 5 years, because I'm the person who has already consolidated the past review of 20 years, right? So this is about SLR. I hope I've done justice to what is an SLR and exactly how you apply it to your particular domain. And now I think we can open the house to questions, because it's the last 15 minutes, and then we go for a break. So questions, if any.
Yes, ma'am.
Any questions?
Just remember, we go to the chat books.
Okay. So, yeah, somebody, let me, good evening. Yeah. Exactly. Where do we register our research topic for meta-analysis to avoid duplication? Shalini ma'am, ICSSR is one organization where you can register it. Okay. So, but yes, we don't generally do it. Very frankly, even I've not done it. So even for religiosity paper, I've not done it, because the process of registering is a little lengthy, So you have to prove that nobody else has done that research yet. Only then can you register. But ICSSR is one organization where you can get it registered. Anything else? Nothing else as of now. Guys, can you, faculties and research scholars, request you to put in any questions in the chat regarding SLR, please. So I'm just reading out, even Sage Research actually has a paper on using registered data in social sciences. Yeah,
The Kavita ma'am is asking you the question.
Yeah, can you recommend one article that can be used as a blueprint for SLR? Ma'am, I'll be sending you this one article, the one that I showed you. Just give me 1 minute. So this is this article that I showed you. I haven't reached the A category yet. I'm still a learner. But this article in my domain, green marketing, this is Journal of Cleaner Production, which is an A category journal, A star rather, maybe DC. I can send you this paper and this is 2017, so it's not a very old paper also. This one paper I can send you as an exemplar for SLR. And I'll be sending you the PPTs, etc. So yeah. Okay. I see more questions coming in. So, yes. Can you recommend one? Can we take more than 2 variables in meta-analysis? Yes, Monu ma'am, you can take 2 variables in meta-analysis, but it has to be, when you say 2 variables, a meta-analysis can only be done on bivariate relationships. Okay, so yes, you can take more than 2 variables in meta-analysis. Can we, in the analysis part, are we going to look into what different objectives there are, what kind of methodology have been used, and what? Mahima ma'am, we can look into that. So if you're doing an SLR, and suppose you find some 58 papers where 58 papers, suppose let me take religiosity paper only. Suppose I find that in research methodology, somewhere around 30 papers are on structural equational modeling, another 5 papers are qualitative, another 8 papers are on correlation regression bivariate analysis, another 3 papers are on panel data. Even this sort of an analysis can be done, but in a normal SLR, not in meta-analysis. In meta-analysis, I will have to take only those papers which report a correlational Pearson correlation value of religiosity and intention. I'll explain that in my second session. SLR increase your value as a researcher. Is it necessary to write? No, Altaf sir, that's not true. But sir, I am myself a person who's struggling with a narrative review paper. So I have this paper, which is again in review process in a B category journal by the name of Society and Business Review. But I'm struggling with that. You know what reviews I'm getting? Where is the Prisma? Where is the inclusion exclusion? Narrative papers never have exclusion inclusion. So those basic literature papers that we used to write, they are now passing. All editors are looking. If you write on literature review, see, if you're writing on structural equational modeling, please do that. There is, despite the fact I'm taking up this topic, despite the fact that Dr. Kaushik takes up structural equational modeling, I have to quote him. He says, and he very correctly says, it is not the method which gets you publication. It is the gap of research and how you set your RO. On the basis of the RO, you choose your method. Don't go blindly on SLR and start writing that. So it's, for me, for what I have seen, it's the gap. If there is no research gap, I have papers in the last, in the year 2021, customer engagement, the paper I'm talking about, it has a record 8 rejections. 8 rejections in 2021. And I know that it's not going to fare very well. Okay, for writing meta-analysis, it is necessary to have a Pearson correlation. Charu ma'am, it could be a Pearson correlation, it could be a t-test, it could be a beta coefficient. I'll give you 2-3 options. It's not necessary that you have to have a Pearson correlation, but if you take a beta coefficient or you take a t-test value or an F value, P value, you can take these values, but you will have to statistically convert them into a Pearson correlation, because the free software that I'm going to show you today, it inputs only Pearson correlation. So there's no problem if you have a paper. I am doing a meta-analytical paper where there are only beta coefficients, but then I am converting them into Pearson and then putting it into the software. Okay, yeah. Altaf sir says sometimes it becomes very difficult to get a good and dedicated team to do all the hard work. Altaf sir, that I really can't comment. If that is the case, I would suggest to do an SLR alone, sir, because that bias factor comes in. You know, after all done and said, we are humans. And if that bias factor comes in and the reviewer sees that bias factor, he'll reject it straight away. The last thing that can happen in an SLR is that the data is biased. Okay, but yes, some people talk to me that when we are doing a PhD, okay, when we are actually doing a PhD, we cannot take another author. So in that case, what you all can do is, you all can show that data set. It's okay, Altaf sir, if you make your own data set of 100, 120 questions, but 120 papers, but please show that data set to your guide. If she okays it and says that, okay, Altaf, so there is nothing more to add. Suppose she says, okay, this is okay, no more papers to add. Then you can say that it's unbiased. At least if you don't want to make a team, show it to an expert. Because when experts work in that, so if I am an expert of sustainable consumption, I will tell you when you come to me with the data set of 120 questions that you did not include Scott and Whittle, you did not include Chang's paper, you did not include Russell-Bell's paper. I will tell you. So at least that, please take an opinion so that the data is not biased. Okay. And even after the session, very frankly, it's when you start doing the papers that you'll have doubts. So if anyone does have a doubt, even after the session, you can please note down my email ID. And I'm also available on LinkedIn by the name of, there also I do entertain a few doubts based on how much time I get. I can't, but yeah, if any of you seriously works on a paper and they get stuck, I do try and help them. How to identify gap in systematic literature review? Shalini ma'am, this is very difficult. You'll have to actually, okay, this is a little difficult in SLR. It's a little tricky. Ma'am, where religion and intention, I know there are thousands of paper because I've read. So if you're trying to take a topic, when I was trying to take religiosity and its impact on intention, I read a lot of papers, ma'am. You need data for SLR. Vis-a-vis that, neuromarketing, there was a special issue of Journal of Consumer Behavior, and I just got lured. And I said, okay, let me do an SLR on neuromarketing, and I'm stranded. I'm just not getting data. So do not do an SLR on a fairly new topic like AI or neuromarketing, okay, or blockchain or metaverse. Don't do it on these because they are new topics. Research is still developing in these areas. Do it in an area which, of course, you have some 100 papers, but the data has not yet been published. And SLR has not been published on that. So you have to check two things. One, huge data on that topic. Two, nobody should have done an SLR on that topic yet. That fulfills your gap. Okay, I'm planning an SLR in particular geographic context. Suppose India. No, you can't do that, Kajal ma'am. I wouldn't suggest that. SLRs are never done for India. Yeah, I have one example I can give you. Again, when we say, there's a Dr. Satish Kumar on LinkedIn. Please, Dr. Satish Kumar is into bibliometric analysis. See, region-wise limiting papers, I'll never suggest you, Kajal ma'am. It's never done. You'll not get that much of data. It's not about me. You'll never get data. But Dr. Satish Kumar is doing something very intelligent, because of which his publication, I mean, every week he publishes an A category paper. Every week. So what's he doing? Sorry? Professor Rasool, could you please mute yourself, sir? Professor Rasool. Professor Rasool, please mute yourself. So, what? Rasool sir, mute kar lijiye. Okay. Yeah. So what you can, what Dr. Satish is doing is, that's very intelligent. Should I show you one of the papers? Give me 1 minute. Give me 1 minute. I'll tell you what he's doing. He's doing a very intelligent thing in SLR. With metric analysis. You'll have to give me 1 minute to. Yeah. So give me 1 minute. Just give me 1 minute. I'll have to search that, but that's something very nice. I want to show it to you. Okay, so this might just not be, is it Dr. Satish? I don't know if it's the same Dr. Satish, but I've got one paper which will prove my point. So I'm just showing it to you. Yeah. So, this is a bibliometric analysis. Bibliometric analysis is generally, I don't know if it's the same, Dr. Satish Kumar, I really don't know, but this is a bibliometric analysis. Bibliometric analysis is a part of SLR. It is a bibliometric analysis on research publications of Maharishi Dayanand University. This you can do because there's a lot of data. So what Dr. Satish is doing is, you'll have to allow me to go to LinkedIn once, because Dr. Satish, every week he comes up with an A category paper. Dr. Satish, I typed the wrong one. Give me one minute. He is in MNIT Jaipur. Let me try and search him. Give me one minute. Yeah. This is him. So Dr. Satish Kumar. Can all of you see my screen? Is it visible to all of you? This is Dr. Satish Kumar, and if you go to his, how do we go to his link? Yeah, so if I go to his page and I show you the post. Okay, this is Dr. Satish Kumar from MNIT. This person, and if you see his papers, I'll show you one of them. Journals more and posts. Please mute yourself. Please mute. Please mute. Everybody mute. I'm just not getting that paper. Give me 1 minute. I'll probably show it to you in the second session. You all can see the screen. I'm just trying to get that paper, or else you'll give me 1 minute, and please we can come to the next question.
Yes, ma'am. Can we wind up this session?
Yes, sir. Yes.
So we can take a 2-minute break. Then again, I mean, you have not to, switch off. We are on the virtual platform. Okay, so before we have conclude this session, I want to thank the ma'am who gave her vital time from his busy schedule to grace this occasion on basically the systematic literature review on various framework. So our ma'am second session is basically, which is the bibliometric analysis, meta-analysis and meta-SEM. If there is any query or any question from the participant, please, you have to send the question in the chat box regarding the first session or the second session. So within the 2 minutes, ma'am, again, we have to start the second session.
Yeah, so we'll be taking a break of 15 minutes, sir?
No, ma'am. As per the schedule, there is no such kind of facility. So everybody will, which is in the virtual platform, just you take a 5 minute, ma'am. But we are on with this virtual platform.
Okay, sir. Okay.
Okay. So just you take a 5-minute rest, but yes, nobody will left. I request to all the participants. Okay, sir. Please join with us. Okay, ma'am. At present, there is a 1829. So we will be back on 1834.
Okay.
Ma'am, can we start?
Yes, sir. So can we start?
Yes, ma'am. Yes, ma'am.
Okay. So bibliometric is not my domain, very frankly. Okay, I do not take up bibliometry. But when I explain that what are SLR papers, I do tell you that bibliometric is more to do with when these 100 papers are collected, and we analyze them citation wise. So there the focus is on how many people were cited in this domain, how many people have published in this domain. It is more to do with authors and citations. Okay, so again, I'm sharing Dr. Satish Kumar's LinkedIn. So these are the posts that he has. He's always written on bibliometry. Okay, yeah. So this paper. Look at this paper. Although this is not a full paper, and this Jaspreet Kaur unfortunately is not me. I wish it was, but it's not me. So 14 years of social responsibility journal. So social responsibility journal is an ABDCB category journal, if I'm not wrong. Okay. So what you do is that you analyze all the citations, etc., of a particular journal, say social responsibility journal. And the good thing which happens in this case is that, when you get this published or you process it to a journal, the journal is also interested because, you are consolidating 15 years of research of a particular journal. So can you imagine the number of citations that you're going to do of that particular journal in this? So, if I'm saying 15 years of only one journal, which means I'm going to in a way, I'm going to collect some 100 papers, all which have a citation of Journal of Social Responsibility journal, right? So people are very much interested. Journals are very much interested in these sorts of, whether you do an SLR or a bibliometry or meta, that doesn't matter. That's okay. Do it for a particular journal. They'll be so much interested because this increases their citations. So this is one trend I have seen in Sir's paper. Let me show you more papers. So he does a bibliometry for journals. So he also has workshop, for example. This is one workshop he's having on 11th and 12th March. If you people want to attend bibliometric analysis, it is something to do with citation, authors. This is his next workshop. So you can go there and yeah. 5 decades of international business and 5 decades means 50 years of data he's analyzed. So let me see this topic. Is it of a journal? Acceptance of European Journal of European Journal of International Management. Again, a journal, past, present, and future. Okay, and where is it accepted? In European Journal of Management only. So, that's a very intelligent thing to do. Consolidate a 20 years or a 2 decades research of a particular journal, then submit it to that journal. Obviously, the journal would like such papers and your publication, becomes much more. So I don't know if we have a PDF of this. I'll have to search if there is any. So now look at this. Journal of Marketing Education, a retrospective from 1979 to 2009. Again, 3 decades of data, rather 5 decades, 79, 80 to 40 years of study. 40 years of study of whom? A particular journal, Journal of Marketing Education. So that's a very, very, very intelligent thing to do. And of course, if I'm not wrong, it is published in this journal itself. Yeah. So JME is the name of the journal. And yes, the acceptance comes from JME only. Okay, so this is one very intelligent thing that Sir is doing. He's doing very good in bibliometric analysis. You can attend his sessions for bibliometric analysis because he's the best man who can tell you how to do it. Right. As far as I'm concerned, I work on meta-analysis. These are all techniques of SLR. Okay. But my domain is meta-analysis. So I'll introduce you to meta-analysis. And of course, even when you do SLR, Chandra sir, please mute yourself. Even when you do an SLR, a systematic literature review, you can follow this approach of, doing an SLR for a particular journal. So they get lured, because so many citations they are going to get. And if nobody has ever validated the findings of their journals in the 50 years, so they are more than interested in that. Okay. Chandra sir, please mute yourself. Chandra sir, please mute yourself. Okay. So now let us go to the second part, which is meta-analysis. So I will be doing meta-analysis. There are too many windows open. I'm just trying to close. Chandra Prabha, ma'am or sir. Chandra Prabha, ma'am or sir, you have to mute yourself, please.
Mama.
Anjali ma'am or Rajiv sir, can you? Okay, yeah, I think they've muted. At last they've muted. Yeah, so we have a kid also who was participating in the FTP. It's a very heavy topic for the kid. So,
ma'am, basically you are the host, so you immediately you can stop anyone.
I can stop. अच्छा, but वो ऐसा mute कर देंगे sir कि
only mute. You have to mute.
कर सकते हैं. ठीक है.
Directly particular participant को ही मैम आप mute कर सकते हैं.
ठीक है सर. ठीक है, मैं कर दूंगी अब. So हाँ जी, thank you sir. So now we come to meta-analysis. In meta-analysis, what we do is we try to get the effect size. So remember that horses example where there were 40 horses, okay? And we were looking at the effect size, or should we say the power of each of the horse. And that power of those 40 horses was a numeric power. Remember, it was a numeric power 0.3, 0.5, 0.6. So now we are going to get this numeric power, supposedly numeric power, from not horses, but research papers. Which research papers? We are going to get them from quantitative research papers. Which quantitative research papers? Those quantitative research papers which either report a Pearson correlation or report a value which can be converted into Pearson correlation. So there are many types of finding out effect sizes from papers, but the most famous in the, we will only be dealing with standardized effect size. The most famous type is the D family, the R family, and the others family. And this is one area which, conceptually, the R family is one area, I can say this very confidently. There are no videos on YouTube except for Dr. Neeraj Kaushik's videos. Okay, Dr. Neeraj Kaushik is the only person who's worked on this area statistically, and his channel has videos. Even my channel has videos, but I actually don't formulate videos for the channel. It is that when I do an FTP, like I'm doing an FTP for Ramanujan College or any college right now. So if they are, I request them, and if they are kind enough to send me the video, allow it to share it, I just share it. But Kaushik sir actually makes small 10 to 15 minutes videos on these topics. He's the only person who has actually, when I was struggling in 2020 with meta-analysis, he's the person who helped people like us to learn meta-analysis with the R family. We, the social science researchers, have to work on meta-analysis with the R family. Meta-analysis as a technique actually comes from medical science, so there are so many doctors. There's one lately, some doctor from AIMS called me up and he said, can I learn meta-analysis? I said, sir, आपको क्या पढ़ाऊंगी? मतलब मैं आपको क्या पढ़ा सकती हूँ? मेरे को तो मेडिकल का कोई आइडिया नहीं. So in medicine line, meta-analysis actually came from the medicine or science line. And the two values which are very famous in medical sciences when we do a meta-analysis is the D family and the others family. So because, and it's not that we cannot do a D family in social science, we can. But for the limited time that I have, I will try to do a technique of meta-analysis which is not there on YouTube. So there is a lot of material on YouTube on the D family and others family, because it is from medical sciences, because meta-analysis originated from medical sciences. So there's a lot of data, a lot of videos on that. There are rarely any videos of how to do a meta-analysis in social sciences in the R family through correlation. So I'm only concentrating on the R family. In R family, I'll go stepwise. Again, stepwise to tell you how we collect data and how we do meta-analysis. Remember my 58 papers? Remember that Excel sheet? I'll show it again to you. The first thing that I have to do is I have to get to those 58 papers, and all my 58 papers are quantitative papers reporting either Pearson coefficient or beta coefficient. Okay, I haven't muffled around with t-test, etc., because I did not have the time for converting them and then doing it in the software that I'm telling you. So what I did is I plainly took up all the papers where a Pearson correlation table was given. So this, what you see on the right side, is a Pearson correlation table. I hope all of you know how to read the values now that you're into a proper workshop where quantitative analysis is also being done. Now, I have to go, if I have to collect data from this one correlational table, I have to go according to my RO. Okay, so let me do this process. Give me 1 minute. Let me do this process with my paper. So I think you have by now understood my paper well. Let me go on with my paper. So I'm taking you back to my folder. Yeah, religiosity. So if you remember, this is my data sheet. This is my data sheet in front of you. And it has the title name, author, year of publication, the two variables, religiosity, attitude, correlation values for the same. This is the Pearson correlation, the sample size, the country, which was the intervention, so on and so forth. But let me show you of how I have extracted it from one paper. So one paper I'll explain to you. These are my final 55 papers and I have numbered them. So I number them as 55 papers. Later on, of course, I included another 3, but right now let the data set be 55. So these are my 55 papers. I have put them into a folder and I have numbered them for convenience sake, because in my Excel sheet, I am going through the numbers. So I open paper number 1. Okay, cancel. Yeah, so this is paper number 1. Okay, if you remember, I had written in my inclusion principle that I will not take any paper which is not in an electronic form. Okay, so this is a paper on religiosity, and this is the model. So religion impacts attitude, religion impacts purchase intention. So what I do is I take up all the values. I'm looking for a Pearson correlation table. Did I lose it? No, it should be there. Yeah, so either a Pearson correlation or you can see a beta coefficient. I've just highlighted it for you. So this is a beta coefficient table that I took up. It gives me a value between religiosity and attitude. So I am collecting probably all the factors which are impacting religiosity. It could be, I'm limiting the factors to only the factors which are available in theory of planned behavior. So theory of planned behavior says that attitude, subjective norms, and PBC, purchase behavioral control, impact purchase intention. So I am taking the values of the standard beta coefficient or Pearson correlation of only religiosity and these factors. Which factors? Factors of theory of planned behavior, namely attitude, perceived behavioral control, and subjective norm, impacting purchase intention. So I pick up this value from my first paper and I put it in the Excel sheet. Further, let me show you one more paper so that it's an example. So either I get my beta coefficient value or I get my correlation table. Now this is my second paper, and I straight away go to, this is the model. So we have purchase intention and religiosity. So correlation. Yeah, so this is the correlation matrix. Okay, so this, what I have highlighted is the correlation, Pearson correlation value for purchase intention and religiosity. Okay, so I pull this value. Now you might say that there are so many other factors listed over there. That's okay, but I'm not going to pull all the values. I'll go closely to my objective, and my objective was to understand the impact of religion on the factors of theory of planned behavior. And the factors of theory of planned behavior are attitude, purchase intention, subjective norm, PBC. That's it. From all these papers and correlation matrices, I will only and only extract the Pearson correlation value or the beta coefficient value of either religiosity and subjective norm, or religiosity and purchase intention, or religiosity and PBC, or religiosity and attitude. Okay, so these are the values that I've extracted, and finally I've got this table. So if you see the values, correlational values, it's religiosity and attitude, purchase intention and religiosity, religiosity and purchase intention, religiosity. So in all my papers, I have extracted only the values which are limited to my RO. There might be other values, just neglect them. Just neglect them. So the first thing is paper-wise collect all these values. But meta-analysis can only be done on a bivariate, on a particular bivariate relationship. So the second sheet that you construct is where you differentiate on the basis of bivariate relationships. So my sheet number 2, let me show it to you. So the first sheet is where I write all the, okay, this is my first sheet, and now comes my second sheet. So my second sheet, I segregate all the papers which have given me a value between religiosity and purchase intention only. Okay, so there are, out of a set of 55, somewhere around 42 papers have given me a value, Pearson correlation value of purchase intention and religiosity. Then I segregate all those papers, and there are 11 which gives me a value of religiosity and subjective norm. Okay, so out of a set of 55, there are 11 papers where the Pearson correlation value of religiosity and subjective norm is there. Further, I go and check religiosity and attitude. So I get another 20 papers out of 55. From where is the segregation happening? The segregation is happening from this so-called master sheet. The segregation is actually happening from this master sheet that we have made, where we listed all the values. So I convert them into bivariate relationships. This is religiosity and PBC. 13 values out of 55 on religiosity and PBC. So this way I convert my sheets into separate sheets of separate bivariate relationships. So somebody had asked that, can we take more than 2 variables? Yes, you can. Can we take more than 2 bivariate relationships? Yes, you can. Okay, so look at the amount of sheets that I have. All these bivariate relationships are going to be individually studied through meta-analysis. Okay, and now once this is ready, I'm ready to go to my meta-analytical sheet. And for that, you will, so religiosity as a DVIV is not important. Okay, just the correlation value between the two has to be picked up. Okay, so religiosity as a DVIV is not important. So now the next step that you have to do is, so now the next step that we are going to do is we are going to download Meta Essentials. I am going to give you the link in the chat. Okay, and it's not a software, so don't worry, they are just Excel sheets with calculations. So this is the link. I'm putting it in the chat. All of you, please quickly go here and download a zip file. I'm going to tell you exactly how it's going to get downloaded. So here, when you go on the sheet, okay, this is actually a software which does all calculation by itself, and it's an absolutely free software. So when you come on this page, you will click on Meta Essential Workbooks for Meta-Analysis version 1.5. The moment you click on this, there'll be a zip file on the left which will start downloading. And when you open the zip file, you will see these sheets, 7 Meta Essential sheets. When you see these 7 Excel Meta Essential sheets, please click and open the Meta Essential sheet number 5, which says correlational data. So when you open the sheet, I'm opening it for you. Please do this process a little quickly because I'm short of time. I'll be waiting for 5 minutes and then I'll start. Okay. Anybody having a problem in this, please do let me know. How do I come to know who's not on mute? Sir, Okay, somebody was not on mute. Okay. Yeah, so this is an Excel sheet and you have to come on 5 meta-analytical correlational data sheet. If all of you have come to this sheet, I'm waiting on the chat. Please say that you have done this so that I can start the calculation part. If anybody, yeah, Kavita ma'am says she's done, so I need a few more. Okay. Three people are done. Can the rest also? I'm giving you 5 minutes. It's okay. Let me tell you the process again. So you go to this link that I've given you. It will open up to this page, download, and you have to go to Meta Essentials. It's in bold. Meta Essentials workbook for meta-analysis version 1.5. When you click on this, a zip file with Meta Essential sheets will start downloading. In this zip file, it will be something like this. If you can see the zip file, there will be some 7 Meta Essential sheets, out of which you have to click and open sheet number 5, which is which is Meta Essentials Correlational Data. Please open sheet number 5 in the zip file, Meta Essentials Correlational Data. I'm just waiting for 5 minutes for everyone to be able to do this. You should be seeing something like this. It will idly, you'll see many sheets in it, but it will idly open to the input sheet. I'm just waiting for 5 minutes for everybody to be able to do this.
ये मो मार वेगे लाम जपन के चावल फार जाओ ना मो बाय बाय ठगा वो खत जाओ ना मो खाई चालो अरे खाई लो अभी जी बंद कर दे ना नेक्स्ट साथ वापस आओ के अब कुरबड़े जी मनु जो नहीं मन मेल कमाए बैठ जाओ निर्माण अगर
Sir, it is very difficult for me to search who's not on mute. I request you to please help me in this. Because, you know, when I'm in session, concentrating on that would not be possible for me. Right now, it was Dr. Indra Raj who was, so I have to search. So I request you to please help me in this, sir, when I'm in the middle of the session. Okay. Yeah, so most of them are saying done. So let's start. You'll get this input sheet. Okay. And now let's start meta-analysis. So what I'm going to do is you'll work on this data only. You'll work on the data which is given to you over here by default in the sheet. We are at the input sheet. You see there are many sheets in this Excel file. And for you, this normal data which is given by default, you'll be working on this. But for me, what I'm going to do is just to show you a demo. What I'm going to do is I'm going to open one of my bivariate relationship sheets. So let me take a small data here. This is okay. This is data of religiosity and subjective norm. And I'm going to pick up the correlation value and sample size of all the papers, which are 11 papers, which are reporting religiosity and subjective norm Pearson correlation value. And I'm going to put it into, I'm going to paste it into the Meta Essential correlation sheet. Okay, so if you see, I have pasted my data and I'll remove the rest of the data which is there. And yeah, so this is my data. I have just copy pasted the 2 values that you need for meta-analysis. One is the correlation value, and the second is the Yeah. Second is the sample values. Okay. So once this has been pasted for you people, you don't have to paste. Please work on the normal sheets. Let me explain to you the columns which are there in the input sheet, which are needed to do a meta-analysis, especially when we are doing it for the R family. So what we do is that there's a study name. So first thing that I'm going to do is I'm going to see my sheet. And in this 11 values that I've taken, of course, there are these authors. I'm going to copy them here for my reference. In case it becomes too not so very good while to see, then what I'll do is, so this way it seems very so it's not looking very neat. Let me neglect it. Let me write it in a short form for you. So suppose this author is Hafiz. Okay, this is Bill. This is Niyad. Okay, this is Jameed. Okay, and this is Ross. Okay, suppose these are my authors. I will fill up the study name. So study name here, I'm going to fill up my author names over here in these 11 columns because I had 11 papers which were reporting correlation. There's another column saying that include study. Okay, you'll see that there's a drop down in this which says yes or no. Okay, by default it is at yes, so please let it be on yes. Okay, and once it is on yes, all your 11 values have been inculcated into the same. Now, correlation value and sample size you have already taken from the data set, so these columns are not to be explained. Sufficient data it asks, so by default it is yes, let it remain as yes. Subgroup analysis and moderator analysis is advanced meta-analysis which cannot be done in this session, so I'll be leaving it. And now I am just going to click the next. So in my case, it's of course my data. In your case, on a default data, you can see it. All you have to do is click on the second sheet, which is forest plot. Please click on the second sheet, which is forest plot. Okay, and let me. Now. So when you come to this sheet known as forest plot, you will see that your same studies with the same authors, the same correlations, okay, have been reported in this sheet. And what the software has given you is it's given you a combined effect size, which I'm highlighting over here, that of 0.31. Okay, 0.31. In my case, it's 0.28 in a fixed effect model. But in your case, it is going to be a little different. That's absolutely fine because your data was different. So the combined effect size of religiosity and subjective norm in my studies, which are somewhere around 58 studies, although they have resulted only in 11 values of religiosity and subjective norm. But you have to see that I collected some 58 studies which were studying the impact of religion or theory of planned behavior over a span of somewhere around 20 years. Okay. And I can say that from 20 years of data collected and analyzed, the impact of religiosity on subjective norm is somewhere around 0.28. So in a way, I can say that the studies of the world say that there's a very minor impact, or should we say small impact of religion on subjective norms. Okay, this will be my conclusion with combined effect size. But there are other values also which have been reported here. For example, One value which has been reported here is weightage. Okay. And what you have to do is, in this meta-analytical model, there's something called a fixed effect model and a random effect. You just go to fixed effect and see the weightages. So if you see the weightages over here, so you know this combined effect size which I've highlighted, it's not a normal average of all the effect sizes. So these are my 11 horses, you know, and each one has a power. So power is the correlational value or the effect size. So these are my 11 horses. These are their effect sizes, or should I say their power. Okay. I have consolidated the total power of my 11 horses and found out the overall power is 0.28. This is a very, very minor effect. Because this is secondary data, I'm not going to manipulate it. I'm just going to report that the effect is minor between religiosity and subjective norm, number one. But this consolidation which has been done has not just been done on the basis of a generic average. There is a weightage which has been assigned to each of the studies. Now, why do you think the study of Ross has been given a weightage of 20%, whereas the study of KKK, whatever this man was, has been given a weightage of 6%? Why is this phenomena there? Okay, so to explain this better, what I'll do is I'll go back to my data. I am studying these two highlighted rows. Okay, I see that study number 5 by Ross has been given a very high weightage by the software, 20.36. And the study by KKK has been given a very, very small weightage of 6.39. And I want to understand why. I understand this is a weighted average mean or a weighted average combined effect size, but then why one study is getting more weightage than another? The answer to that is in the input. So look at study number 5 and look at study number 11. Okay. Look at the sample size of study number 5. It is 997, which is the highest in the whole column. And also look at the sample size of KKK study number 11, which is 315, lowest in the whole column. Thus, it can be said that the weightages which are assigned over here to the studies have been assigned on the basis of the sample size. Now you might ask that why is the weightage being assigned on the basis of sample size? So when we are assigning a weightage on the basis of sample size, this is because we understand that all those studies which have a higher sample size are more near to precision. Okay, I'll give you a very simple example to explain this point. This is nothing new to meta-analysis. This is there in all statistical research. So when my PhD scholars come to me and say that, ma'am, there's a structural equational modeling that I've done, but my model is not running. Okay. The first thing I ask them is, how many samples did you take? So they say, ma'am, we took 200 samples. Is the study wrong? Is the primary data wrong? Is the reliability, etc., everything is okay, but their model is not, structural equational model is not working. The first thing I tell them to rectify is double the sample. Go to somewhere around, you have 200, increase the sample by 500. The moment you increase it to 500, generally there's a precision, the model works. Of course, there might not be one or two hypotheses which might be proven, that's okay, but the model runs. That is because higher the number of sample size, more is the precision of the study. The meta-analytical software takes into account this one particular basics of statistics and thus assigns the highest weightage to the particular study which has the highest sample. To show you what are the formulas behind it. So if you want to know that what are the formulas which have led to this, You can see it over here, and these formulas have been taken from Borenstein's book, Introduction to Meta-Analysis. It's a book by Borenstein, 2009. There's another edition in 2011 also. These formula are something that the Excel macro is using to calculate effect sizes. And if you see that when we look at the calculations of weightages, okay, the sample size becomes a very important point of those calculations. Okay, so to explain that better, what I can do is if anybody of you do want to go into the statistical analysis, which I feel, yes, some people do want to know from where is this coming. So there is again a sheet. This has been actually done by, this has actually been made by Kaushik sir in one of his videos. And the only thing that I've added to this is the formula. So these red formulas are something that I've added to this. So he actually explains that if this was your correlation and sample size that you picked up from any study, so suppose religiosity and subjective norms gave you these 6 values, you first calculate the Fisher's Z from the correlation, the formula which is given over here. After that, you assign a weightage to each of these studies. The formula of the weightage is n minus 3, where n is nothing but the sample size. So the higher the sample size, the more weightage will be given to the particular study. This is a formula which is used to get hold of the effect size. From weightage to variance, from variance to percentage of weightage, to further steps to finally reach the consolidated effect size, which you can see in your Excel sheets. The whole stepwise calculation in a very open way has been explained by Sir in this sheet. I'll be sending you the sheet. I'll be sending it to the organizers so that you can see it. It's also available on Kaushik sir's YouTube video. Just that the formula is something that I've added. So how you have reached this particular calculation can be seen on with that red row, which marks the formula. Okay, but yes, through these calculations and trusting Sir for statistics, I can say that to assign a weightage to a study, a higher or lower, it is the sample size which actually assigns the weightage. Number one. Number two, if I even neglect this, okay, so yeah, why neglect them when I'm done with this? The second thing that you can see in this sheet or in the analysis is what we call the confidence interval, upper and lower. It's a very simple thing to understand. So if 0.65 is the power of my house, I can say that it is going to remain in this power for how long? So what's the limit? A horse is never always going to perform at a power of 0.65. He will vary in that power in his performances. He'll vary. So to what extent will he vary? He will vary from an extent of 0.59 to 0.71. Okay. This is called a confidence interval, the upper and lower one, which shows that how this effect size that you've taken from each and every paper can vary. To what extent can it vary? You don't have to in a paper report the lower limit or upper limit or the confidence intervals of each of these studies. But in a paper, you do report the confidence intervals, okay, lower and upper, for the combined effect size. So if my combined effect size in a fixed effect model, so in meta-analytical model, you have 2 types of model. One is fixed and one is random. So these are 2, philosophies of meta-analysis, I can call it. So when you're at the fixed effect model, it's showing an effect size of 0.28. If you drop down and come to random effect, the effect size changes to 0.31. Okay. We'll not get into a discussion of what is fixed and random and when to use it unless and until, we go into advanced meta-analysis. But this correlation that is reported over here, For this one correlation, we have used the fixed effect model. And for the same, we have, listed the upper and lower interval. Okay. So also, there's another diagram that we have to sometimes report in our research. Not many times have I seen this diagram, but sometimes the reviewer might just call for this diagram. So this is what we call a forest plot. Actually, this sheet is showing the forest plot, the diagrammatic visualization of these studies. So these horizontal lines that you see are larger or smaller based on the confidence interval. And don't we say that, when somebody says that I'm going to get, suppose a student gets 63% marks and that is his power. And he comes to us and says that, ma'am, tomorrow I might get 80 or I might get 40 also. Whereas there's another student who's getting 65 marks and he comes to me and says, ma'am, my marks will vary max from 60 to 70. I think the second student is more reliable because the confidence interval between the upper and lower limits is shorter. He's more authentic. He's more, should I say, more reliable. Okay. Same is the case with studies also. In this forest plot, the horizontal lines that you are seeing, if the horizontal line is a little, longer, we can say that the gap between the confidence interval is larger. Okay. And if we say that the confidence interval is shorter, for example, in study number 8, you can see that the confidence interval is shorter. We can say that the difference between the upper limit and the lower limit is lesser. Okay. Based on this, we give it a precision. So this blue, circles that you can see, this is actually the weightage assigned to each study. So you will see that study number 5, if you see the graph, study number 5 has the largest. So my cursor is right there. Study number 5 has the largest weightage attached to it. Basically, the confidence interval between the upper and lower one is the shortest, and the study is more precise. Vis-a-vis that, if you see the same weightage assigned to study number 11, you see that the so-called round ball, blue color ball, is very, very small for study number 11. And you see the confidence interval is very, very wide. Okay. So this study is that student who says that my marks next time, ma'am, could vary from somewhere around 50 to 90. That's why the confidence interval is so large. And if the confidence interval is so large, I would rather give the student a lesser weightage when it comes to power. Okay, so that's the logic between the confidence intervals and the weightage assigned to each of the studies. Now, after this discussion and after understanding what is the weightages, should we remove the studies which have a lesser weightage, or should we remove the studies which have a lesser precision? No, we are supposed to be in meta-analysis retaining all the studies. So irrespective of whether a study has a better precision or does not have a better precision, we will have to retain all the studies because in SLR, we cannot have a bias. Okay. And how do we report these values, or which are the values in this sheet which you have to report? For that, I'll be able to show you a sample paper, the same one in which we had seen a PICO. So this is the sample paper. And if you see the meta-analytical table, I'll just read out the first row for you. So that's a Prisma. So they have worked on attitude and intention. This is where you have reached. Okay. The N is 6117. So if I open up my any Excel sheet, this one, bivariate one, all that I have to do is I have to calculate all the N's over here. So N is sample size. All that I have to do is I have to aggregate all the N's. Okay. And the value comes to some 4915. So for his sheet, all the values out of, say, if he had 30 papers, K19 means somewhere around 19 papers reported a correlational value of attitude and intention. The N here means the consolidated N for all those 19 papers taken together was somewhere around 6117. Further, his consolidated R value, consolidated value of effect size was 0.61. In our case, it has come out to be 0.21. This is what he's reporting. Okay, he's reporting the correlational value 0.28 in our case. In his case, it has come out to be somewhere around, here's the paper. Yeah, it has come out to be somewhere around 0.61. And he reports the confidence interval of this particular consolidated value, which in his case is 0.51 to 0.68. In our case, it is somewhere around 0.25 to 0.31. Okay, so these are the values that you have to report in a meta-analytical paper. Again, this has only been done for one bivariate analysis. We will have to do it again and again for all bivariate analysis. So as many sheets you have in your bivariate analysis, that many times you will have to do the meta-analysis. So if this is my sheet of bivariate analysis, this is my sheet of bivariate analysis. Okay. Okay. So as many bivariate relationships I have, that many number of times I'll have to do a meta-analysis. So, and these many rows will I have in my paper also. So these will all become my rows. So you can see all the bivariate analysis. These will all become my rows in a meta-analytical paper. Okay. So that's about an introduction to meta-analysis. I'll now open the house to questions so that if anybody does have questions on this, they can please ask me. And while asking questions, I might just go back to the sheets and explain them through it again. Please put in your questions on the chat. When you put in the questions, I'll be able to explain this better. Are there no questions or is somebody writing? Okay, I'll wait for a minute for you to write questions. If there are lesser questions, I might just go to the next topic, which is heterogeneity, and finish it. So I'm just waiting midway to see if there's anything you haven't understood. Yes, Charu ma'am. So just look at this paper. He has actually written for 5 bivariate. Now, the first bivariate is, oh, have I shared? Give me a minute. Have I shared? No. Sorry. So look at this paper, ma'am. So this paper that I've showed you, we have done it for 1 bivariate attitude intention. Then there's a second bivariate subjective norm and intention. There's a third bivariate. So this paper itself has done it for 5 bivariate analysis. Right. So yes, it can be done for many. It can be done for 4 to 5, rather more than that also. There's one paper in which I've done it for 14. The customer engagement one, which is not getting published, that's actually a meta-analysis of 101 papers where I've got some 14 variables. If you want me to show it to you, I can show it to you. CE, I've named it patience now. Let me show you that paper also, because you'll get an idea of how many can we actually do. I can't pass these papers to you because they are not yet published, but I can always show them to you for reference. So this is my CE paper where Dr. Barari and Dr. Santini have really become competitors for me. So I'll just show you the table. It's a huge paper of 101 data, meta-analysis 101 data. So this was my model. Okay, so this is what we found out. This paper was on, unlike the religiosity one, we were trying to find out all the antecedents and consequences of customer engagement which have ever been reported in the past 20 years. So when we worked on this, we found out that there were quite a few. On the left side, you see the antecedents. On the right side, you see the consequences, and they've all been generated from secondary data. So I'll just show you one of my tables. So yeah, effect size. So we have reported, we have taken each bivariate relationship as a row. So I have some, yeah. So how many? 14 rows, 14 bivariate relationships I have studied. So all these relationships that you see, performance, quality, etc., reward, customers, they have all been, they are all giving me correlational values of customer engagement and brand commitment, customer engagement and PI, customer engagement and customer satisfaction. So they are all bivariate relationships with CE. Okay, so how many minimum papers are required for one? Yeah, that's a good question, ma'am. In fact, in this paper, we have written one of our limitations is that despite the fact that we had got somewhere around 40 relationships, very frankly. So I have an Excel sheet. If I can show that to you, because you'll have to give me 1 minute. I have that on my desktop, but too many things. CE, customer engagement. It must be. I'll show you. Okay, I'll show you this sheet. This was by the name of. Yeah. So I'll show you the original sheet, which came out after studying more than 101 papers. So initially, when we were collecting data, this was my Excel sheet. So you see, there are somewhere around, so I came across, so there's somewhere around, roughly, if I can say, yeah, somewhere around 77 of them, which were impacting or consequences of CE. But what happened, I'll tell you. For example, and this I've written in my limitations. For example, positive emotion, I got only one paper. So I got only one paper where positive emotion and CE, I got a correlation value of say 0.8 and a sample size of 250. I got only one value. Price fairness, again, only one paper. And on the basis of one paper, you can't do a meta-analysis. So I had to remove all these variables. Intrinsic enjoyment, positive emotion, variety seeking. There was somewhere around 77, out of which I had to retain only 14, which were giving me the maximum values. So ideally what I do is anything less than 3 values, I don't work on that. Okay, anything less than 3 values, I don't do a meta-analysis, because then what sort of a meta-analysis is it? Just by one paper, it's not a summarization. The essence of SLR is summarization. Okay, can this include any mediator or moderator? Yes, it can include a mediator or moderator, but the problem is, the practical problem that I have had in the CE paper is that I've listed age as a, predictor of CE, but age is actually neither a predictor nor a consequence. It's actually a moderator. So age has never been studied in any of the papers as a consequence or a preceder. So age as a variable should not be taken for meta-analysis. That is one mistake that I've done in the CE paper. Okay, mediators, moderators, unless and until you can prove theoretically that they directly impact also. So suppose there's a mediator by the name of attitude. Suppose, okay, but you can see in the paper a direct impact, and you can prove in literature that there's a direct impact of attitude on CE, only then take it. Literature cannot say that age directly impacts CE. Literature says it's always been studied, age has always been studied as a moderator. So it's very difficult to defend. You said location can be a control variable. So how? No. Location is not a control variable. Location is an intervention. It's actually a moderator. It's an intervention. It's a moderator. Moderate analysis is out of the domain of this workshop. Okay, but you can go to my YouTube channel and probably see what moderation is, or Dr. Neeraj Kaushik's channel also for moderation. Okay, so very few questions. I can now then go to my next topic, which is heterogeneity. Okay, I think I'll go to my next topic, which is, I'll have to close a few windows. Please allow me to do that because too many windows open. Yeah, so this remains, the meta-analytical sheet does remain. And okay, and sample paper remains. Sample paper remains, Excel sheet remains, the files can be closed. Give me 2 minutes to just close all the files that are there. Okay, so we can go now to the next topic, which is heterogeneity. I'll close these files. I'll be sending you all these files, but yeah. So let me go to the last part, which is heterogeneity. And if you know that, you'll be able to complete this one table that you just saw. So heterogeneity is, yes. Okay. So heterogeneity is another topic where, you know, in meta-analysis, we just don't report, you know, the effect size. So meta-analysis is not as simple as just reporting that, okay, this is the effect size, and we are just reporting that. Okay, so here what we do is we try to understand a trend or a pattern, or let's say the variance pattern or true effect pattern, or the change in effect size of different papers. So, you know, some papers are reporting the same, between religiosity and intention, the same correlation is being reported as 0.3, some papers 0.1, some papers 0.8. So there's a lot of heterogeneity within the data. Okay, we are supposed to be statistically reporting the heterogeneity. So Higgins says that heterogeneity in this data set that you've got will be there. So it's not that heterogeneity can be avoided, but you have to report the heterogeneity. So what are the methods of reporting a heterogeneity? The first way of seeing whether your data has heterogeneity or not is the forest plot. Okay, so in your forest plot that I just showed you in Meta Essentials, if you see that the data is helter-skelter, so, you know, all the studies are divided into left and right side, they are not falling in a single line, you can say that the data is heterogeneous. If all the studies in a forest plot are falling into one single line, you can say the data is homogeneous and report the findings. This test of heterogeneity or homogeneity is a very, very basic test of heterogeneity or homogeneity, and what we call as a basic eyeball test of heterogeneity and homogeneity. So we have to find a conclusive method of reporting heterogeneity, and that is why we do a statistical method called a chi-square test, which gives you a Q value. And like a normal chi-square test, if all of you do know what is bivariate analysis, chi-square is an association test. So chi-square test, when performed on this data set by, of course, the Meta Essentials, it will give you a p-value. All of us know how to assess a p-value. A p-value is statistically significant when it is less than 0.05. In case you run a Q test, which is of course a chi-square test, and the results show a p-value which is less than 0.05 or 0.1, different authors give different benchmarks. Please do cite the authors that you're taking. So if the p-value is less than 0.05, you will say that the data set that you have, those 11 papers or 12 papers where you were showing religiosity and attitude, that data set of 11 papers is heterogeneous. So if the p-value of the Q test performed on this set of 11 papers, which were there in Meta Essentials, comes out to be
p-value is significant at less than 0.05, you will say my data set, my 11 papers are heterogeneous. There's nothing wrong in reporting a heterogeneity, so be relaxed. Despite the fact that this one test or the Q-value test reports whether a data is heterogeneous or homogeneous. So if the p-value is more than 0.05, obviously the data is homogeneous. If less than 0.05, which means significant variance among studies, thus heterogeneous. This reporting of heterogeneity or homogeneity is something which is very, very basic in a Q-value. So there were further methods devised to quantify this heterogeneity. So, you know, the Q-value only told us whether the data is heterogeneous or not. So the problem that started happening in medical studies is that, you know, even if there was a very, very small heterogeneity, say 0.0005, very, very small heterogeneity, even in that sort of a heterogeneity in data, the p-value became significant. Now, despite the fact that there is heterogeneity, no doubt, but the heterogeneity is so small, 0.0005% heterogeneity, it is so small that it can be discarded in studies. But when we did a Q-value on it, the P became significant because P will become significant even at a very, very minute heterogeneity. So it became difficult for us to judge heterogeneity on the basis of Q-value. And this is when we went to another technique, another advanced technique of heterogeneity, which is the I-square. In I-square test, we calculate the heterogeneity in the form of percentage. So when our Q value P comes significant, which is less than 0.05, we also see the value of I-square to see how much of significant heterogeneity is there in the data set. If the heterogeneity is somewhere around 25%, we say that the data has less heterogeneity. If the heterogeneity is somewhere around 50%, we say that the data has moderate heterogeneity. And if the data has a heterogeneity of 75% or above, we will say it has a substantial heterogeneity. No amount of heterogeneity that is reported in meta-analysis is wrong. Heterogeneity that you're reporting is a pattern of secondary data. You are not wrong anywhere. The only time that you can go wrong in a meta-analytical study is the inclusion and exclusion principle. That is where you can go wrong. There could be 10 papers you have not included. So you have not included statistical data. Your combined effect size is wrong. Your heterogeneity is wrong. But if you have collected the papers correct, now all the values that you're reporting, whether it's a combined effect size, whether it's the confidence level, upper or lower, the weightages, anything that you're reporting is authentic because it is done from secondary data. So do not get boggled if a substantial heterogeneity is there. In the paper that I'm talking about, and I'm going to show it to you, my tables show that my heterogeneity was somewhere around 90 plus. Okay, so I'll show it with the example. So now you can see these values over here. So this is my meta-analysis sheet. This is an actual sheet where I have put up values of religiosity and attitude. So these were 11 papers from the 55 papers which reported religiosity and attitude. And if you go a little below the sheet, these are the heterogeneity values that you have to read. Okay, so Q value is 402.40, so that should not bother us. In a heterogeneous data, the Q value should not be 0. It isn't 0, so I think the data is heterogeneous. The P value reported for the Q test is 0.000, which is statistically significant because it is less than 0.05. And I square, which is the extent of heterogeneity or how heterogeneous is my data, the percentage of heterogeneity, although p-value is telling me that there is heterogeneity, significant heterogeneity is there, but how much? The I squared says that my heterogeneity is exorbitantly high at 97.51%. If I show you the final paper of my final table of my paper, or let's see the sample paper. So this is my sample paper that I've been showing you. So look at this row. N, K, R, and C, I have explained to you. The Q value over here is 341.72. 3 asterisks means it was significant, which means P value was less than 0.05. I square for all his 5 bivariate relationships is above 90%. And if I show you my paper, where is it? Yeah. So if I show you the table of my paper, my actual paper of religiosity, down to tables. Just coming to the table. Yeah. So if you see, yeah. So most of my tables also show that there is a Q value and significantly heterogeneous, right? So even these values show that there is heterogeneity, and yeah, quite a significant heterogeneity in all relationships, which is somewhere more than 90%, like is there in this table. So in case your bivariate relationships do show a significant Q, there is heterogeneity, and if I square comes out to be some 90-95%, don't be scared. Just report it and conclude this one final table. Again, this whole process that I've told you of calculating N, K, R, C, I, Q, and I square has to be done or repeated every time for each bivariate relationship. Okay. Further, of course, eyeball test is a very, very basic test, but because I've told you, let me show it to you in meta-analysis. After knowing all this and the high level of heterogeneity that is there, even if I look at the forest plot, you can see that is helter-skelter. So left, right, center. So the values are not falling in a line. So even if I go by the eyeball test of forest plot, it shows that there is a high level of heterogeneity in my data. Report the pattern and finish off your paper. So that's about the whole session. Last 10 minutes, any questions, please? There should be questions now, if you've been hearing me. Any questions in any concept? No questions? That's a little odd in a technical session like this, but yeah, there are questions coming up. What is the significance of calculating heterogeneity in analyzing the paper? So we are, Charu ma'am, we are discussing the pattern, So we are actually, just by saying that the consolidated rect size is 0.28, which we have reported, that doesn't suffice. We are supposed to be going further into analysis. So this is a step above reporting the consolidated rect size, where we show the pattern of the data, whether it's heterogeneous or not. Further, when we go for meta-analysis, we do a moderation analysis, we do a meta-SEM also. Okay, so heterogeneity helps us in the meta-SEM also, correct? So that is the reason why we are going for a heterogeneity test. Can we use an I-squared test in regression model as well? I don't think so. No, regression model has nothing to do with I-square. At least in meta-analysis, it doesn't have anything to do with I-square. Okay, so for a basic meta-analytical paper, I think you can start with this. And slowly and gradually, when you see videos and you start working on further papers, that is when you go to MetaSim. Yes, I'm sharing my email ID again. Some people are asking for this. So this is my email ID. And on LinkedIn, I'm available as Dr. Jaspreet Kaur from Pearl Academy. So it'll be easier for you to find out. And you can connect on LinkedIn too. Any other questions? And meta-analysis is just a part of SLR. A similar session you could do with Dr. Satish for bibliometric analysis. This is just one meta-analysis. Another technique is bibliometric analysis, of course, of which I'm not a very good expert, although I've touched upon it to show you one paper. But Dr. Satish Kumar is the best person for bibliometric analysis. Right, so I don't see any questions. So can we then conclude the session?
Yes, ma'am. Yes, ma'am. Yes, ma'am. The many participants, they have mentioned. Thank you very much. Nice session, excellent session, very interesting.
I'm honored, sir. It means a lot. Thank you so much.
Very interesting and informative session. Thank you, Dr. Kaur. I was keenly listening your lecture. Your lecture one of the first session, which is systematic lecture review and various framework, and the second session, which is the bibliometric analysis, meta-analysis, was very enriching and interesting. I am sure it must have added to knowledge of the participant. You have presented your lecture by involving the participant along with the lecture. The participants are also equally enthusiastic in your response to your query. So you have also given a lot of reference on SLR and bibliometric analysis. I hope this would be very helpful for the participant to enrich their knowledge on SLR and BAM analysis and engage in the same in their future research. It was really a pleasure listening to you and hope to have you more in Ramanujan College and Indian Accounting Association NCR chapter. So thank you, ma'am.
Thank you so much, sir, for inviting me here once again. And thank you to Anjali ma'am also. It's an honor, sir, when people like Kaushik sir come. I'm really still a learner, and it's a matter of pride. And I think if I have to give credit to someone, I think Kaushik sir has been very, very critical in explaining to me the nuances of meta-analysis, because he's a perfect statistician. So a bit of a credit for whatever I have done, explain, goes to Dr. Neeraj Kaushik also.
Thank you, ma'am. Ma'am, please make me a host.
Yeah. Yeah. So, give me 1 minute. I have to go to participants and ये बड़ा मुश्किल काम है सर. वो स्लाइड पे वो हमें आदत है वो पीपीटी पे नजर रखने की, एक्सेल शीट, और उसको फटाफट बदलते हैं हम. अब मेरे को ना आपका नाम नहीं मिल रहा. 1 मिनट रुकिए आप.
राजीव नैन.
हाँ, मैं 1 मिनट कोशिश कर रही हूँ.
लाइव को या फिर लाइव को मैम आप खुद बंद करें फिर.
नहीं सर, आपने डॉक्टर के नाम से होगा ना आपका.
हाँ जी
पहुंच गई. हाँ, मैं आर में ढूंढ रही थी. अब मिल जाएगा. डॉक्टर राजीव के नाम से होगा ना जी. एक somehow not getting it, sir. 1 second. सर आपका डॉक्टर राजीव के ही नाम से है ना? मैंने देखा तो था अभी. 1 सेकंड रुकिएगा, मैं देखती हूँ. चैट क्लोज करते हैं. मैंने देखा था, अभी मैंने आपको को होस्ट बनाया था।
जी जी जी, डॉक्टर राजीव
मैम
मैन।
टॉप पे ही है, वो टॉप पे ही है मैम।
अच्छा, सबसे ज्यादा, हाँ 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 हाँ, मैं
टॉप
नीचे
पे ही है मैम।
करेक्ट। थैंक यू सो मच। वो मैं अल्फाबेटिकली, ओके,
थोड़ा
मेक होस्ट। हाँ जी सर, बना दिया आपको होस्ट, आप देखिए।
ठीक है मैम, थैंक यू।